and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations, and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify.
Good afternoon. The time being 1 p.m, I declare open the general meeting for the Gladstone Regional Council for the 16th of June 2020. I'd call for apologies. We have no apologies, so we move to the next item on the agenda, which is messages of condolence. Do we have any messages of condolence, councillors? No messages of condolence. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the prior notifications of MPIs and conflicts of interest. And I have one prior notification from Councillor Hanson. Over to you, Councillor Hanson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I, Rick Hanson, advise that in agenda item number 3.2, the application for a permanent road closure Pacific Crescent, Curtis Island, that I have a conflict of interest in this matter as I'm a part owner in a property in the vicinity of the proposed road closure area. I've determined that this personal interest is not of sufficient significance that I would lead me to make a decision on the matter that is contrary to the public interest. I will best perform my responsibility of serving the overall public interest of the whole of the Council's area by participating in the discussion and voting on the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Do I have a mover or a seconder whether Councillor Hanson has a conflict, please? Councillor Churchill? So, Councillor Churchill is moving no conflict exists. Do I have a seconder? Is that seconded by Councillor Muscat? Thank you. That no conflict exists, I'll put that motion. Sorry, Councillor, good luck.
Well, we can move that he has a conflict, as he's raised a conflict, but that he's able to stay in the room, which is what I would seek to support.
Thank you. Back to the mover of the motion, Councillor Churchill.
I can't see how he's got a conflict of interest based on the fact that he resides in that area, because we have many matters come before this council on all aspects of the region, and just because I live in a residential area of Clinton, each time we have a matter that comes to us relevant to the Clinton area, are you indicating that perhaps I have to continue to declare a conflict of interest? I would have thought, as Councillor Hanson has indicated, he's articulated, he can remain in the room and be able to debate in the best interests of the region and the residents and the ratepayers.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. The second of the motion, happy with that?
Yes.
Microphones, thank you. Unless there's
Yes,
an
Mayor.
alternative motion, I'm going to put that motion. The motion is that no conflict exists. All in favour? Those against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Is there any other further conflicts of interest or councillors would like to raise now? No, thank you. I'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the Merrill Statement, and I'd like to use the Mayor's Statement today to acknowledge our local Gladstone icon, Bruce Hunt. Bruce Hunt has been listed in the Queen's Birthday Australian Honours with an appropriate appointment to the Order of Australia. In Australian honours system, appointments to the Order of Australia confers the highest recognition for outstanding achievement and service, and Bruce certainly has done that for the Gladstone region. The Medal of the Order of Australia has been awarded to Bruce for his service to the community in Gladstone, including for his service in Rotary, Exodus Tutorial Centre, the Gladstone Regional Art Gallery and Museum, Tallua State High School through their Interact Club, and of course his role as the President and a P&C committee member on the Gladstone South State School many years ago. Bruce is a true community champion, and I congratulate Bruce for his appointment to the Order of Australia Medal. Thank you, councillors. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the confirmation of the minutes, and G2.1 is the confirmation of the minutes for the meeting of the 2nd of June 2020. Do I have a mover? Move Councillor Trevor, seconded by Councillor Branthwaite, that there be a true and correct record. Is there any discussion, councillors? No, I'll put that motion. All in favour? The minutes will be carried. Well, next item on the agenda is the officers' reports, and G3.1 is the monthly financial report for the period ending the 26th of May 2020, and I'll hand over to the General Manager of Finance and Governance and Risk. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good afternoon, councillors. This afternoon's item here is the monthly financial statements through to essentially the end of May. They were produced on the 26th of May. We're on track and in line with the forecast position that we had previously forecast with you, with a surplus there of $3 million from an operating position perspective. There certainly has been some movements within both the operating income and expenditure items that make that up. Pleasingly able to report that we have received the general purpose grant in terms of 50% of the prepayment from that is normally coming from the federal government, that is essentially paid as a prepayment from the next year. It's just the way the government distributes that. We have received that, and that will be reflected in your June accounts, which will take our general purpose grant allocation to just slightly exceeding forecast there at $8 million instead of the 7.8. Our expenditure is tracking in line with expectations. Nothing particularly that I believe is worth calling out. What I would like to call out and just again focus is certainly our capital expenditure. So our forecast there, and because we've gone to production with respect to budget, we've actually held the forecast with where we have produced those papers at, and we're seeing, and that was 40.8 million. We are expecting to come in just slightly below that at 39.1. So there certainly is a mountain of work to be done during the June period, with our actual through to the end of May being $32.8 million worth of capex. Our outstanding rates certainly does compare in line with previous years, but certainly we've had a look at some of the data with which what we're presenting there for you, and we probably looked at adding that little bit of additional information that councillors have been asking and seeking with respect to, I guess, the breakdown of rates and charges there in terms of outstanding balances, by essentially type of assessment, whether it be residential, commercial, etc. And also then breaking it also then down by suburb, looking at what the gross value of the rate is outstanding, but also the number of properties that have outstanding rates in those areas. So they're included in your agenda for your information. Our ratios are in line with both forecast, and there's nothing significant there that's worth calling out. Positive operating position and debt positions, and again the only one that is of a concern is that asset sustainability ratio, which is in and around that 40.6%. So happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mark. Questions to General Manager, please. A question, Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Matt. It's probably not just relevant to this report, it's the overall aspect. So too, the General Manager of Finance, Governance and Risk, in identifying that our current budget was adopted on the 17th of July 2019, and maybe this is also a question through to you, Mayor Matt, is that in the current cycle, and we've been, I suppose, challenged by the COVID-19, and I applaud this council on its wonderful efforts with an economic stimulus, but in our cycle, how do you believe we will be tracking for our budget, handing down our budget and our budget meeting for the 2020-21 period?
Well, we're due to present the budget on the 7th of July. All councillors will have a copy of the final budget papers on the 23rd of June. We've worked through the process together as a team, so I'm hoping that we're all supportive of what we're going to see on the 23rd of June, and we'll deliver that budget on the 7th of July, and obviously keeping in mind what's going on in our community and around the world at the moment. Mark, would you like to add to that?
Oh, the only thing additional, so certainly probably, concur with the Mayor with respect to timing. As has been raised previously, we are living in different times, and given the uncertainty with respect to the environment, particularly with respect to recovery actions, there has been some additional powers that have been added into the Local Government Act that enable us to certainly strike a rate or strike a concession at a time other than our budget meeting. So those additional powers have been added into the Local Government Act. They are only for 1 year only at the moment, and it's for the 20/21 financial year. So they are in effect and available in your essentially toolkit should we wish to apply them next financial year if the recovery isn't panning out like we would like to see. Certainly, I think the biggest item I think we need to start tracking and will be continuing to track, and that's why we're probably starting to put that increased level of detail in that report there, is going to be in and around our outstanding rates.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you. Councillor Trevor?
Thanks, Mayor Matt. Mark, given that the Agnes Water 1770 community were most heavily impacted and continue to be impacted by COVID when it comes to the tourism industry, what do our records reflect in relation to arrears of rates down there, given, as I say, that they're probably the part of our region that has been most heavily impacted by the reduction in tourism numbers?
Certainly from you've got in their report there that show, that Agnes Water from whilst not a number of properties, but in terms of outstanding value of rates, there certainly probably is where we've got probably the highest level of that, in and around $2 million of outstanding rates currently within that community. That's just Agnes Water, that's not 1770. So let's just, so this is that report's been generated by locality. So that is with respect to Agnes Water. And it's something that we just need to track and monitor over time, and make sure that we're supporting those communities and those ratepayers, and make sure that we're looking at noting their circumstances, and if we need to make adjustments to payment plans and the like, then we do. We try and make sure that it's certainly from a rate collection perspective, that our team is engaging at every opportunity with those ratepayers to make sure that we're putting in place a plan that is suitable for them. So you note that in your COVID concessions at the moment, you actually have waived interest through on arrears of rates through to 30th June 2020. So that's providing some relief to those people currently.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, can I have a mover for the motion, please? Move Councillor Hanson, seconded by Councillor O'Grady. Put the motion. All in favour? It's carried. The next item on the agenda is G3.2, which is the application for a permanent road closure on Pacific Crescent, Curtis Island. I'll hand to the General Manager of Strategic Asset Performance, Anna, and Anna is online, so... Sorry, she's here. Well, it won't be a second. We just have to get her into the room. Anna, we've just handed over to you for item 3G 3.2.
Thank you, and I'm going to hand it over to Tina Davidson, who is acting as our property acquisition disposal specialist.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to allow Council to consider whether to support an application for permanent road closure of an unformed road currently used as a footpath located at South End Curtis Island between Enfield Crescent and Pacific Crescent. Ultimately, the decision lies with the Minister for Department of Natural Resource, Mines and Energy as to whether the road reserve is closed or remains open, not Council. However, DNRME are obligated to provide Council an opportunity to provide feedback on the application, whether Council supports or doesn't support the application, which is the subject of this report, which will be considered as part of DNRME's assessment process. DNRME are also required to assess the local community opinion by public notice. But in line with Council's approach with asset management, Council officers decide to carry out their own community consultation to gain understanding as to what impact this may have on the community and consider as part of the decision-making process. 3 options have been considered and detailed in the report, with the officer's recommendation of not supporting the application for permanent road closure of the road on the basis that the road is or may be used regularly by the public, noting that the Minister for Department of Natural Resources, Mines and Energy makes the final decision as to whether the road remains open or closed. And you will note that further correspondence has come through today from the applicant as well. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Councillors, questions to Tina or Anna, please. Councillor Trevor.
Thanks, Mayor. Tina, I haven't seen that correspondence, I'm sorry. It's probably fed through my emails, but could you just give me a brief outline of what that information was from the applicant? Sorry, additional information?
So the additional information that was provided was considered as part of our decision-making process. So it was just probably, just reiterating in regards to the additional feedback that he had provided as part of the application process, and to say that there could be additional support that he could obtain for this application process.
Thank you. Other councillors, questions? Councillor Churchill.
So just in reference to the additional information that's come to us, have we all received that? Could we get are we in a position to be able to get a copy of that information now?
We can organise it. It was sent by email.
Yeah, it was sent to him
All right.
yesterday at 11:05 in the morning.
Right.
Perhaps, Councillor Churchill, I'm a bit behind with my busy schedule, just as you are.
Any further questions? I'm happy to, the agenda's here. The report's there for you to read. The additional information is provided by the applicant, who, I understand. The one concern I guess I took from his email to us last night is that he was of the opinion that the consultation was between adjoining neighbours, and so therefore he didn't seek to gain support for it, whereas it seemed to have got a lot more, we seemed to did a lot more consultation than just immediate neighbours, is that right?
Yeah, so originally within the report you'll see that only 13 letters that went out for 13 landholders, and from that we received 30 submissions. However, out of that, which is also detailed in the report, 10 of those were from the landowners that we originally had sent for the letter out to for consultation.
So I'll keep going then. So of the 13 letters of the immediate landholders, 10 of them objected?
No, we received 10 back and 9 of them objected to it.
Thank you. Councillor Branthwaite.
What were their reasons for objecting? Can I ask that?
If you have a look at the attachments, there was a summary of all the feedback that was received.
Oh, righto. It's okay. Learning to find out where these summaries are.
Yeah, sorry, if
Councillor Muscat.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, Mayor. I have read the submissions, and I guess it's pretty much one saying one thing and the other one saying the exact opposite. So it is quite difficult to, I guess, understand who is, what to do from here. So the only thing I can see here is that there's obviously a lot more submissions that would like to have this pathway remain open. Now, the additional information is that if we would have done some things differently, then we would have a different result. Is that do you agree with that?
So when we first went out for community consultation, we were just looking at those properties that would actually be affected, that we deemed, as council officers would be affected from that area of road being closed. So as far as the additional feedback that we received, that was out of our control. That was something, it went through to a progress association, and we had the additional feedback that come in from that. So when we went out for the community consultation, it was that, in the area, the Enfield Crescent and the Pacific Crescent, because, as I said, we thought they were the ones that would be affected of this area of road being closed. So with it going to the wider community, that was something, as I said, at the time we didn't see that was necessary. We were looking at the actual road network as to what impact that would have. And for Enfield Crescent and Pacific Crescent, that's why we thought that they would be the only ones that would be impacted if that was closed.
Thank you, Councillor Goodluck, and then Councillor Churchill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you clarify with me the piece of land in question, the pathway, will actually have to be purchased by the applicant?
Correct.
So that's correct. And in the event that the pathway is absorbed into that land parcel, the impact to community members that might need to utilise that pathway, because there's obviously, as other councillors have mentioned, some people are saying I use it all the time, other people are saying no one ever uses it. So it's just one of those things you've got to sort of take at face value, I guess. But in the event that the footpath was closed, as far as an impact to a member of the community, how far would they then have to traverse to get to the other side?
So I roughly worked it on about 100 metres as being the most someone would have to walk with that being closed.
Thank you.
Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mayor Matt. I'm just trying to come up with the additional information that's been provided, because, and I understand the agenda item, but now we've got it, and I never knew who, it didn't indicate in the agenda item who the applicant was, but now as a result of an email received, additional information has been provided, and I'm trying to make an informed decision. For me to do this, I've got to read that information and try and understand how it correlates to the agenda item, and I think we've all got to deal with that, and some of you have probably been proactive to be able to get that information. My question is, has there been a precedence of this type before in the Gladstone region in relation to a road closure? Yes. Under those circumstances? I learned from history as I like to go forward.
Okay, well, history shows that, and the applicant won't like to hear this if they're listening online, that we don't close roads unless there is a public benefit to doing so. That's what we have traditionally done. So unless there has been a public benefit to the closure of a road, there's no reason for us to agree to close the road, and then we offer an objection. We would say that council objects to the road closure because we can't see a public benefit to it. This particular item is counteractive to that, actually.
Okay, so that precedent's been established as for the benefit of the community?
Yes,
okay,
a number of times.
Not either way, right. And then I suppose, and you mentioned the road network there for a second, understanding the area within our region. Is this particular road or this small section of road part of any future road development, or is it within our road program for upgrade, installation, or any type of operational works?
So we obtained some feedback from our asset planning section. So that's one of the part of our internal stakeholders. And their comment from there is there hasn't been anything identified that area road reserve is required for. That's a state. And with regards to any infrastructure, planned infrastructure, because sometimes with the road reserve there, if there's any sort of planned infrastructure to go under the road, is sometimes why we would want to keep that area of road open. And asset planning have advised that they're at this stage, no asset has been identified to go into that area road reserve.
Thank you. So in light of the information that's been provided, Mayor Matt, or to our officers through the CEO, are we accepting that information that has been provided?
Over to you, CEO.
The information was provided to councillors directly from the applicant, so officers haven't been involved with that. It's not an uncommon occurrence for applicants, once they see a report, to go to council to provide information they deem is critical. It's totally at councillors' discretion as to whether you consider that information, or if you would like further time to consider, or to just go with the information that's provided in the report. So it's totally at councillors' discretion.
Okay, thanks for that. I understand that, and I'm sure my fellow colleagues or associates have probably got other opinions, but for me to make an informed decision, the applicant is raising some matters that seem to be slightly inconsistent with certain aspects of the report. Again, I'm not challenging that, far from it. I'm just simply raising that because the applicant is indicating in his advice to us as elected members that there are some inconsistencies or there is some information that is not being disclosed to us. So are you reading that? If you've got the official email there as well, are you reading that, or am I misunderstanding some of the messages within this email?
Do you want me to take that? At the end of the day, no, that's okay. At the end of the day, the report's presented for councillors to make a decision on. The officers have got a recommendation there, so you can read that email into it or not. At the end of the day, some councillors didn't receive it, and others haven't had the opportunity to read it because it came in so late. So as the officers have said, we're only making a recommendation on council's position on this on behalf of the community, and the department will make the final decision. The way I'm seeing it, though, is it went to a Progress Association meeting, from what I hear. So council officers surveyed the immediate landholders. They took it to a Progress Association meeting where those for and against would have had the opportunity to put forward their submissions. So having just recently attended the South End Progress Association where they did the opening of their new hall and hundreds of people turned up, I'm assuming that would have been the topic of conversation at some point. Everybody who had an opportunity to have their say probably has. I would have said most, at least, have had an opportunity to have a say on this. Could be wrong, but it's a pretty small community. It doesn't take long for word to get around. Anyway, I'm comfortable I have enough information to make a decision, but over to other councillors. Councillor Goodluck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that we've got all the information that we need to make a decision today. I understand that the applicant sent through some more information from their perspective last night or this morning, whenever it was, and some councillors might not have had an opportunity to read it. The information, as the Mayor's pointed out, from a council's position is in this document before us. From my perspective, it's a tricky situation. It's not necessarily an outcome that will keep everyone happy in this position. But I think, given historically that council, as the Mayor's pointed out, doesn't close roads unless it's overall for community benefit, I do think that this is a community footpath. It's a community asset, so to speak, regardless of who says whether it is or isn't used on a regular basis or whatnot. It's there for the community to use at the moment, and while I empathise with the applicant's position, I think that ultimately for me, this is a community asset that should remain in the hands of the community. So I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation under that basis.
Thank you, Councillor Goodluck. Do I have a seconder for the motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Is there further questions? Councillor Muscat?
No, I don't actually have a question, but I would like to support this, the recommendation basis, on the basis that I guess we have done a consultation. I understand the position of the applicant, but again, the opportunity's been given to them, like we mentioned before, and it's overwhelmingly in not support of the closure of this road. So I understand that they might have wanted us to go a bit wider in the consultation, but these people are, in my view, the ones that are going to be most impacted by the closure. So I'm happy with the reach of the consultation at this stage, and I will support the recommendation.
Thank you. Back to Councillor Goodluck before I put the motion. No? Okay, there's no further discussion. I'm going to put the motion. It's moved by Councillor Goodluck, seconded by Councillor Cameron, that the officer's recommendation be adopted. All in favour? And the motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is G3.3, request to consider adopted infrastructure charges and rebate scheme for the development application 32/2019, a material change of use for premises, aged care accommodation and residential care facility. General Manager of Customer Experience, Mark, is on the line. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Snappily titled. This is a request to enter into an infrastructure agreement which represents a significant variation to the officer's delegated authority. The first part of the applicant's request is to resolve a charge outside of the current adopted infrastructure charge resolution and align with similar agreements entered into by Rockhampton and Mackay councils some 4 and 5 years ago. And that is, in summary, to resolve to charge $13,000 per 2-bed unit and $15,000 per 3-bed unit, compared to our adopted charge of $20,222.30 and $28,311.20, respectively. The justification for this request is that the lease will limit permanent residence to 2 people, irrespective of the size of the independent living unit. And applicants believe that the burden of the charge at the reduced rate is more reflective of the proposed use. The second request is that the conditions of eligibility for the infrastructure charges rebate scheme be relaxed and they receive the full capped rebate at $500,000, but that development be staged in accordance with currency of approvals in the Planning Act, as opposed to the eligibility criteria which we've applied to our scheme. All of this is outside delegated authority, adopted infrastructure charge resolution and the rebate scheme, which leads us no choice but to recommend a refusal. Council, of course, have your discretion to resolve otherwise, and alternative options are provided if that's the case. We also have Shantae Farrington, our Senior Planning Specialist, online, if you have any detailed questions.
Thank you. Councillor Goodluck has a question, and then I'll throw around the table.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mark. It's a very comprehensive report, and it probably outlines to me, as a side note, that we probably need to readdress our infrastructure charges scheme, which I believe we're in the process of doing. So I'm not familiar with what the National Retirement Census report conducted by the Property Institute of Australia. Are you aware, is that body or organisation somewhat of an independent body and a reputable organisation, yeah? From your perspective?
It's a trade organisation as far as I'm aware. Shantae, do you have any more details on that report?
No, I don't have any further details.
No, that's all right. So just given the information that body provided, or provided by the applicant, I suppose, and was that the basis on which Rockhampton and Mackay Regional Councils considered the infrastructure agreement for the lesser charge? Is that your understanding? Or was it that the case that they were already charging that agreed amount? I'm just trying to ascertain.
So sorry, they're all Councillor Mackay were reduced charges, and I think that's a fair summary of the context of the reduction.
Yep, so it was a reduced charge and based on some information. All right, thank you.
Mark, can you remind me, the rebate we're offering to this development is up to $500,000, is that correct?
The maximum allowed under the scheme capped at $500,000, correct.
So $500,000 infrastructure charge. I know we can reconsider that, but that's what our policy is at the moment. Other questions, Councillor? Councillor Trevor?
Thanks, Mayor. Mark, the reduction of $500,000 from 2354,476.60 to 1854476 is in line with our infrastructure charge policy designed to attract new business, etc. My question to you was, I can't recall the condition in relation to time restriction. That is to say, shovels in the ground by when? What's the time restriction again in order to qualify for that reduction of $500,000?
Shanti, can you correct me if I'm wrong? It's 2 years under the eligibility?
That's correct, 2 years for the first stage, and then 4 years to complete the entire development.
So in order to qualify for a reduction of $500,000, the applicant developer must proceed with stage 1 of this development within a period of 2 years from today. Is that correct?
Of the adoption of the negotiated infrastructure charge, yeah.
So it's 2 years from the adoption of the infrastructure charge agreement, and how long does that usually take to be sorted out in house?
Shanti, that's a matter of days, at most weeks.
Has the applicant indicated that stage 1 or additional stages won't proceed unless we consider alternate reduction of charges other than just the $500,000?
They've not made that explicit in the letter, which is one of the attachments that was provided, that they're asking for more flexibility for the later stages.
So do we know whether it's possible that this important infrastructure project for our community, do we know whether or not it will proceed depending on the outcome of today's decision from Council if we don't reduce infrastructure charges further than the sum of the $500,000?
I'm not able to determine that from what I've been provided, but Shanti, you've been in close discussion with the applicant and developers. Is that your opinion?
That hasn't been provided, that discussion, in terms of would they commence or not based on this decision, no.
What I'm worried about is that if we agree to a reduction of $500,000 but don't agree to a further reduction, the opportunity to have this important project in our community may well be lost. And what you're telling me at this stage is that we don't know whether a further reduction will enable this project to proceed, and that if we don't offer the further reduction, it may well be the case that it won't proceed.
Well, we're not able to tell you that, but that is a fair summary. When we've looked at the risks here and based on the discussions that we've had with the applicant, we've framed the risks around not receiving the infrastructure charges, really. But your line of questioning in terms of the viability of the development itself is probably absent to the conversation, but isn't one that the applicant has made explicit in in their requests to us.
Is the project shovel ready? That is to say, can it proceed immediately as opposed to within 2 years. Has the developer indicated to you that if there is a significant reduction in infrastructure charges, shovels could be in the ground and jobs could be created for our community within a matter of weeks or months?
Again, speaking for Shanti, that has not been the nature of the discussions that we've had. Shanti, are you aware if operational works approvals have been sought or are lined up ready to go?
So to date, no subsequent applications have been lodged to council. So the first would be operational works for stage 1. So no, that hasn't been lodged, so it wouldn't be shovel ready.
Sorry, Shantae, I can't hear you over the traffic. Could you start again, please?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So to date, operational works haven't been lodged for stage 1, so it wouldn't be a matter of weeks. The applicant would have to progress with engineering plans and engage consultants to get the operational works application in, and then obviously subsequent works to occur construction-based.
And in your experience, Shantae, if the developer was to expedite such operational works, including engineers' reports, how long would it take to get shovels in the ground and jobs created for this important community project?
A difficult timeline to map. Generally, operational works can be progressed through council under delegated authority within 1 to 2 months if it's a high quality application, and that leaves the applicant to engage preferred tenders to actually do the construction of the works.
Given the circumstances in which the community is presently confronted, including COVID, and given the fact that this development is important not only for future retirees of our community but also jobs, I'm just a little bit constrained in my decision-making process today in relation to affording a further reduction in accordance with option 2. Simply because I don't have the information in front of me to make a fully informed decision in relation to whether a further reduction should be provided, on the basis that if things could be expedited, local jobs could be created and the project would proceed. What I also don't know is that if further dispensation is not offered by this council, whether the project will fall over altogether.
Madam CEO?
I was just going to suggest, Councillor Trevor, if you're of a mind and wanted to support an increased reduction, you could identify conditions which could link to timeframes, as you're indicating, if the motivator is to have works happening quickly. So that may be something Council would like to consider as well.
Thank you.
I would point out on that point, though, that the applicant is asking for relaxation of the only mechanism by which we can ask them to expedite. So we've asked them to, if they want the $500,000, to commence within 2 years, and they've asked for a relaxation of that and the completion of future stages as part of their desire for flexibility.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That answers my question too. Councillor Goodluck?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm a great supporter of infrastructure charges. I think it is a cost to the community, and I think council needs to be in receipt of the generic costs, the actual costs that it costs us to provide this infrastructure. But what I have before me is a report that identifies that 68% of the occupants in this facility will be most likely be single resident, 32% will be couples, and we're looking at 2 and 3 bedroom units, and it's going to be further enforced by the fact that the lease arrangements within this facility will actually limit the occupancy to a maximum of 2 people. So even in the 3 bedroom houses, only a maximum of 2 people will live in those places, and they'll be open to visitors. And I'm not sure, whether or not, Mark, what I can see here is that both Rockhampton and Mackay actually took that into consideration in their decision making, and entered into infrastructure agreement for reduced rates based on that information, which I actually think is a sensible is a sensible pathway forward. From myself personally, we all acknowledge the importance of retirement living and aged care developments within our region. I'm trying to remember, but I think this is realistically the first in 4 years sitting in my seat that I can recall an actual aged care, a genuine and real aged care retirement facility that has come before us for consideration. And I may be wrong there, but from memory, that's the case. And they're actually asking, from my position, for a realistic request. They've got. I'm not sure, Mark, whether our LGIP or whether our infrastructure charges would align with that $13,000 to $15,000 charge rate, and whether or not we've done that work. I know in your option 2 that you've got the revised charge rate there. Have we actually calculated whether or not that is a reasonable charge, given the information that we've got that suggests that although it's a 3-bedroom development, it won't actually have that constant burden on infrastructure? Have we done that work, or we're just accepting that was what the applicant, the information the applicants provided to us?
Mark, I think your mic's on mute.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor. Councillor Goodluck, it's a good point that you've made, and given that I guess I'll just reiterate that it's not within officers' power delegations to approve this, which is why it's with yourself, because within the LGIP, our adopted infrastructure charge resolution, we don't have the ability to go beyond that and apply the common sense, you might say, that you're applying there.
No, and I completely accept, and I accept that, Mark, and it's in no way comments on officers. I understand that it's not within your delegated authority, and that's exactly why it's here. So, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hanson, then
Hold on.
Councillor
Sorry,
Cameron.
Mr. Mayor,
not finished.
if I can, before you go, sorry, you lost me now, Mr. Mayor. I had one other. I'll let someone else.
Councillor Hanson, Councillor Cameron, then we'll come back to Councillor Goodluck, who had another question.
Given that we should be doing everything we can reasonably to ensure that we get some sort of retirement village happening, this is the closest we've ever been, as Councillor Goodluck said. I would be happy to go to option 2 because the fact that there's a bit of a precedence been set with us chasing down retirement villages here in Gladstone with the Phillip Street project, and they've mentioned that in their spiel to us, the applicant. I think we should be doing as much as we can within reasonable, within reason. So I'd be in favour of option 2. At this time, I think it's imperative that we move in the direction of getting this group going as quickly as we can, so that we can offer something in the region. So, as far as making up the money for infrastructure charges, I think that could be easily, in this case, taken up in the general rate base.
Councillor Cameron, good luck, and then back to Councillor Muscat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, in your financial and resources implications, if we adopt option 1, the implications are nil. If we adopt option 2 and 3, it says, should council apply its discretion against the officer's recommendations and decide to consider one of these options, the calculation of additional demand placed on trunk infrastructure that will be generated by the development will fall to the council to pay, which is our ratepayers. Just a couple of questions. Why is that? Why does that happen? And if we decided to exercise our options on option 2, could we push the responsibility of these trunk infrastructures back to the developer?
Thanks, Councillor Cameron. I think the point that's being made there is that the idea of the infrastructure charge is to recover the burden or the cost of the burden that's being placed on our trunk infrastructure. Should we reduce that in any way, shape or form, then what the implications there are talking to is the assumption that a 3-bed is a 3-bed and a 2-bed is a 2-bed. The burden, the gap in the burden would have to be borne by us if we had to upgrade, because we've entered into an agreement to receive less than this. The applicant's position is that the actual burden and the expected burden is going to be less because of lease arrangements. So it's not quite as binary a choice if it's either us or them. Their point is the burden will be reduced, and it's not the same impost on us as a regular 2 or 3 bedroom unit.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Goodluck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The point that I forgot before, I know when we brought in our infrastructure charges scheme, we brought in the timelines, and the idea about that was to try and promote developments to hit the ground and get that expenditure and that development happening quicker. And I think in this case, the applicant has set out a valid reason that, you know, that there's a whole range of factors that come into play when you're talking about these types of developments, and having a 2-year timeline or whatever the timeline might be set by council would only be one minor factor that comes into play. There's a whole range of market forces that affect the viability and the continuation of these developments, and I think we probably need to take that into account specifically when we're talking about aged care, retirement living type developments. So I'd be, you know, just because council says, oh, we'll give you a discount and you've got to go and get it done within 2 years, if the market's not selling these units or these developments, etc., you know, the developer's probably not going to be in a position where they can make that happen regardless of whether or not we've given them a timeline and a discount. So I think I'm happy to move option 2. Can I just confirm there with the entering into an infrastructure charge, that then goes to the CEO to work out the best way forward there under option 2. So we're able to offer that discount plus at the reduced rate, which to me is that they've got valid reasonings there. I understand that our LGIP says we'll be subject to those costs, but we've got a valid argument that the demand on that infrastructure will be less than what an ordinary 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom development would be. And so are you able to enter into those arrangements, Mark or Lisa? I'm not. That's option 2 gives you that. Yep.
Sorry, yes, that's exactly what it would do. You're essentially resolving a charge outside of the previous adopted infrastructure charge for these independent living units, and then we're able to enter into a negotiated infrastructure agreement with the applicant.
Thank you. I have questions from Councillor Muscat and Councillor Trevor before I move for a second of that. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to, I guess, go through this again. This DA application was lodged on the 10th of July last year. So at that stage, the applicant, you know, obviously knew what the charges were going to be, the public information. They also knew that we had a scheme in which they will be able to receive 50% or to a maximum of $500,000 as a rebate. I find that we find ourselves in these situations often, in which, you know, we obviously have people that want to do things in our region, which is wonderful, but they know what the charges are and also the benefits that our region provides them, meaning, for example, you know, a rebate up to $500,000 for to cover the infrastructure charges. Now, I think we continue to, I guess, do things without thinking too much. I don't. Again, we come and then we read that they want to be charged 13,015 instead of 20 or 28. These figures come from past decisions from other councils. I'm not comfortable to actually just say, oh, well, now we're going to charge 13 instead of 28. I mean, what is that based on? A report that, yeah, I guess that's interesting, but then we need to then look at then how we classifying then developments and accommodation units and things like that, if that's what we want to do. To me, if somebody will tell me that they read a report and they've done something and then they find this information, yeah, okay, that's great, but I'm not just going to take that as the only side of the story. I need to have more information. I need to. People will say lots of things when they want to, I guess, pay less money, which is understandable. But then we also need to understand that someone is going to pay for it. This is not money that nobody's going to have to pay for. So our ratepayers will have to pay for it. So we are providing a very important and valuable rebate scheme, and that's the decision that this council's taken in the past, to support and to encourage this type of developments to come in here. I would, I would support some kind of relaxation, meaning, I guess, this type and the size of this development, the 2 years would maybe be a bit restrictive, and I understand how the market works and how, they need to sort of go and see if they can sell these units. Fair enough. I would support some kind of relaxation around the timings. But at this stage, I just can't see why we will just take random figures and use them to replace our current infrastructure charges for the units that they are applying for. So that's kind of where I am at the moment.
I have Councillor Trevor and Councillor Goodluck would like to reply to that, I think.
I understand your sentiments, Councillor Muscat, but in my humble opinion, I believe it's more than just about infrastructure charges. It's about local jobs for our community, and it's about also keeping our elderly in our community. And as Councillor Hanson has quite rightly pointed out, it's been 4 long years now, 4 of which I've sat on this council, and nothing has progressed in relation to retirement villages and aged care facilities for our community. I'm embarrassed by that. I've been a long-term local. I've lived here most of my life. And I am deeply disturbed by the fact that for all sorts of reasons, we've been unable to attract retirement investment in our community. And of course, as we all know, our community is judged by the way in which we treat our elderly. And I think to a large extent, this council, previous councils, going many years back, have struggled with the ability to attract and retain not only a retirement investment, but also the jobs that go with it in building the complex and the jobs that remain with it once it is built. If anything, we have a lack of aged care support workers in our community. And any investment we can encourage to come to our community is only going to enhance the availability of that workforce in our community. I agree with Councillor Goodluck in relation to option 2, and I also agree with Councillor Rick Hanson in relation to option 2. I wonder if, though, Councillor Goodluck would consider amending his proposed resolution to include a time limit. I think if we're going to offer a significant reduction of over $1 million in relation to infrastructure charges, it should come with conditions. The developer will sort itself out in relation to local jobs, and we'll see what happens in relation to that. But importantly, I'm keen to see shovels in the ground when it comes to a development of this nature, not only to support local jobs, but to finally get some retirement facilities in our community. It's not only the jobs that are created by supporting a developer in making this project happen, it's also about our social infrastructure in retaining our elderly, our grandparents, our child care support workers, and also our volunteers for our community. They're the matters that I've taken into consideration in supporting Councillor Hansel and Councillor Goodluck. I'm happy to concede a significant discount to make this happen finally, but I must say that would have to be subject to a time condition, because I'm not going to give free for all to developers unless there's some conditions in relation to timing.
Thank you, Councillor Trevor. Councillor Goodluck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just, in relation to Councillor Muscat's remarks, I don't think we do things without thinking. Only a month ago we had a similar request around infrastructure charges, and from memory that was declined because we did think about it. And for this particular matter, the comment around the ratepayers will pay, I think the LGIP, it's a very important planning document that we've got, which enables us to try and future plan around what the cost will be. But in this instance, we've actually got evidence provided to us, statistical evidence and evidence around the lease arrangements that will be put in place, which will actually reduce the actual burden on that infrastructure. So whilst we can foresee with our planning to the best of our ability what our costs will be as far as infrastructure goes, at the end of the day, the actual capacity that we have in our infrastructure systems may vary depending on the actual burden. And the evidence I've got before me suggests that the actual burden will be less than what our information has foresaw. So that's the basis on which I'm happy to support option 2. And around timeframes, ordinarily I would agree with Councillor Trevor around timeframes, but I just think the fact of 2 years, the applicants made a valid point that market factors, given the current impacts to our community and nationally and globally around the COVID situation, we don't know how many people are going to be in a position to buy into this type of development in the next 12 or 18 months. We could end up making the project fall over completely if we put restrictive timeframes on it. I think from the work that this proponent has done in the community around their community engagement, community consultation, I think anecdotally, from my own understanding of the demand that is there, we've got a large number of people that want this development. They want I don't foresee that there really will be a problem with the demand, and therefore I don't think that we'll actually have a great deal of issues around getting this development up and running. And I'm pretty sure that the developer, by the same token, will want the same thing to happen. So I'm happy to support no timeframes. See how we go. I've lost motions in here before, and might be another one, but I think the market factors and that demand is not something that will overwrite any time frames that we can put on this type of development. And I think the demand is there. It'll come down to our community and whether or not they're able to get in there. And at the end of the day, this is about trying to keep our grandparents in our community as best we can. So I'm not sure if you've got a second.
I haven't yet. I will probably put that now, but I also note that Councillor O'Grady, Churchill, Cameron and Branthwaite and myself haven't commented on this yet, but I will put the motion. I will get a seconder so we can continue the conversation. Thank you, Councillor Hanson.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
The motion. From my point of view, I want to see this development happen as well. I also want to see the Phillip Street Community Precinct happen as well, with an aged care facility, retirement facility there. In terms of probably, because I've been here a lot longer than most people, I have seen the construction and the development supported by our council for New Auckland Place, for Eden Vale, for Eureka in Wick Street and also Settlers in Martin Street. So I've certainly sat around the table long enough to encourage and support aged care facilities in our community, and I'd love to see these two more happen, both in Phillip Street and in Tannum. So that's my point of view. I think $500,000 is a fair infrastructure charge reduction. I get it. If you give the developers more, then they're going to be very happy with that. I'm not opposed to option 2, which is what you're putting there. I'm probably more in line with Councillor Trevor in terms of a time frame, because that might actually, at the time when people are looking for work and jobs are scarce, if we can encourage this development to happen a little bit faster, and our operational works team can get this development approved through operational works, and you can get shovels in the ground, I see a better outcome, not just the fact that we're going to be able to have another aged care retirement facility in our region, but we'll also have jobs right at the moment when COVID-19 has put so many people out of work. So I'd probably be more in line to put a time frame on it, like Councillor Trevor has said, and say it's $500,000, which is what our policy says, and you're suggesting, I believe, in your recommendation, $1 million, so that's doubling of that infrastructure charge. So I would suggest, I would support what Councillor Trevor's saying, that if you want the other $500,000, you get going and you get this development happening. As Councillor Muscat said, they have gone through the development application process knowing full well what our infrastructure charges were, knowing full well what our infrastructure charge incentive scheme was. And then they probably spend considerable money getting to this point, to be quite honest. So I'm pretty confident that they know what they're doing. They want the development to actually happen. And they're just probably looking at a way to put more money on the other side of the coin, other side of the ledger. But I like to go round to Councillors Churchill, O'Grady, or Cameron or Branthwaite if they'd like to comment before we vote on whether we're increasing something by $500,000.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mayor Matt. Unusual for me to be silent on a matter, but I've sat and listened to what everybody has had to say, and I agree with you, Mayor Matt. I agree with Councillor Trevor, but in light of saying that, we still have, as part of this process, a good governance process that we can move a motion, or an amendment to the motion anyway, in good governance, and I would propose that at the end of it, if there is a consensus around the table, because the point that's highlighted to me is the operational works have not been lodged. And from my perspective, I totally support anything we can do, as we have had with the passion plea from other councillors, for our seniors of our community. But at the same time, I wouldn't like to think that we'd be sitting here in 2 or 3 years' time wondering when the proponents, and I'd like to share your optimism, Councillor Goodluck, but having previously been the chair of the previous committees of planning and development, there wasn't a week or a fortnight that didn't go by that we would hear of or meet with proponents of aged care and retirement villages. And it's not just the aged care aspect, it's not the retirement aspect or the independent living, it's the supporting services that are required also within our community for aged care, which means we start to talk about the next level of high care, tri-care, and thereafter. So what I'm saying from my perspective is that I'm very keen to support the proponents. I'm very keen to support option 2, but I would also be strongly advocating, albeit I'm prepared to move an amendment to the motion unless Councillor Chris Trevor wants to do that himself, in moving an amendment to the motion, is that there has to be some level of timeline, because these type of projects are important for the social infrastructure, they're important to retaining our seniors, but they're also about the importance of attracting seniors to our region as well. And the last point I want to emphasise is that it would be also remiss of me if I didn't indicate that some of the conditions that are required, and perhaps that can be done through a delegated process to our CEO, is that some of these conditions that need to be implemented, we need to understand may trigger other important social services to the Boyne-Tannum, the Gladstone region as well. And perhaps if we get those conditions right with timelines and the requirements of the proponents, we may see other tiers of government recognising the need to increase additional social services within that area and within the region. So I'm prepared to move an amendment, but at this particular stage, prepared to be guided by you as Chair, Mayor Matt, to allow everybody to have a discussion, but put on notice that an amendment may be forthcoming. Thanks.
Councillor Churchill would like to go around the table. Councillor O'Grady.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I had the privilege of attending one of the community consultation meetings that they held about this, and it was just amazing. People were hanging off basically the rafters. It was just so packed, and it was all positive information. It was just, actually, I was really blown away about the amount of actually retirees that really wanted to do something in that space. So, and they don't want to leave the region. They were only leaving the region because they couldn't afford it at one stage. So, but I would imagine, you know, when these come available to rent or hire or buy, I really think that they'll be in the right space, or the community be in the right space to do something. So, yeah, I'm going to recommend option 2.
Thank you, Councillor O'Grady. I know Councillor Moscato's looking, and I'd just like to see if Councillor Branthwaite or Cameron would like to comment before I go back to other councillors.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Sorry, Darryl. Yeah, look, I'm warming toward option 2 because I agree entirely with Councillor Trevor that we need to get these projects up and running. But really there's got to be some form of a time frame, because generally with projects like this, they're all subject to pre-sales as to when these projects can get underway. And traditionally, that was, back in the good old days, was about 20%, but these days I think it's closer to 50%, depending on where their funding is coming from. There's a couple of ways of going about this, I guess. I mean, we could adopt option 1 with an amendment to say that option 1 stands and the infrastructure charge is 1.84. But if the project can be started within 2 years, a further $500,000 will be deducted from the infrastructure charge. I don't know whether that's availability, and you could probably attach to that in the event that they time out, they front up and show cause as to why they shouldn't pay the extra $500,000. Then we would be in a position to say, okay, what level of pre-sale are you at? We need 30%, we've got 25, we believe we can get the other 5 within 6 months. You say, okay, we'll give you an extension. We have the ability to do that. And I'd like to see something like that rather than lose a project of this proportion.
We can do that. We have done something similar with Stockland. Unfortunately, they didn't take that opportunity up. We offered them an infrastructure charge or sort of an incentive for them to build the redevelopment there at Kmart and Target. Unfortunately, that didn't proceed. They've done some smaller work inside, which is fantastic, and added a few more shops in, but nothing to the extent of what it was going to be. And that got extended probably twice, I think. At least once was extended for 12 months, and they didn't take it up, and then it's lapsed. So there is sort of opportunity for us to do something like that. Councillor Branthwaite, sorry, the CEO.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just wanted to clarify, and perhaps Mark might want to, just in terms of the timeframes, option 2 does say that the timeframes align with the planning scheme timeframes, and that's what we need to be very conscious of. We can't act outside of the currency periods for those developments. Mark, did you just want to clarify that, what the intention was? I think that's causing some confusion.
Yes, apologies for that. It does mean that it would just run with the currency period for the approvals. So the incentive rebate scheme, as Shanti mentioned, has a condition that if staged, the first stage must be completed within 2 years and further stages completed within 4. So it could be a compromise to resolve that the first stage continues to be completed in 2 years, but we give the developer flexibility on that 4-year completion to allow the market to develop.
I've got Councillor Branthwaite, and then I've got a few councillors, and I'll come back to Councillor Goodluck.
Thank you, Mayor Matt. From my perspective, the likes of the recommended infrastructure charge, that's actually been filed down from what Mackay and Rockhampton have charged in the past, and from what I'm aware that Mark said before, it's actually 4 years ago this sort of thing happened. But in saying that, we actually need to have aged care facilities within our community, especially at Tannum Sands. And having this time frame over 2 years for stage one and completed in 4 years gives us ample time for this community to start advertising the fact, why don't you retire here and bring another reason for people to live and stay in our region. So from my perspective, I'm fully 100% behind option 2, and really encourage the proponent or the actual developer to get a wriggle on, because we need to get this started yesterday. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Muscat, Hanson, then good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's actually a bit upsetting that we take the position of, I guess, talking about we want, that they're supporting or not supporting of our elderly. Like, I'm 100% supportive of having more retirement villages. I'm 100%, 150% supportive of having more jobs in this region and having, wonderful projects happening and infrastructure and social improvements to our social framework, etc., etc. But that's not, today what we're talking about is infrastructure charges and someone using something that this council is put in place to encourage these developments, which is going to give this developer $500,000 of a rebate. So I think we are all very supportive of these projects. So now I don't see how we will lose a project or not have this happening if we don't give them an extra $500,000 in rebates. They fully understood what the charges were in the first place. So to put at this council and to put us, well, I'm not going to support option 2, but this is in no way directed to the fact. I support 100% the establishment of new and improved aged care facilities or retirement facilities. But this is a development application, development charges that have been, this developer is going to be benefiting by $500,000 worth of rebates, and it's a commercial activity at the end of the day. So I support our elderly, and I'll support more people retiring in Tannum, in Agnes, in wherever they want to retire, wherever their families are. This is about infrastructure charges and a developer going to get $500,000 more of the ratepayers' money. So I'm not able to then go and support option 2. But at the same time, I want to reiterate and I want to confirm that it's not because I don't support retirement villages or not support jobs in our region. It's because I am talking about a development application and a benefit and a rebate that is going to go directly to a developer, not necessarily to retirees or people wanting to buy these units. This project to me is happening. It was going to happen. It was going to happen before. So they are putting us in a position in which, they just trying to get as much as they can. So, and we are going to set a precedent right now in which, whoever wants, they're going to just keep pushing and pushing until they can pay the least they can pay. And I just don't like to see us in that position. So if we want to review infrastructure charges, then fine, let's do that. If we want to revisit the rebate scheme, well, that's great, let's do that. But I just find this quite dangerous, and I think we are supporting this project very well to the $500,000 that they will get in rebates.
Thank you, Councillor Muscat. Councillor Hanson, and then Councillor Goodluck, and we might put the vote, please.
There's been a lot of mention of demand for this facility, or this type of facility. I don't know whether you still call them tri-care facilities, but a transition to ageing facility. We haven't got one in the region. We've been looking for one for a long, long time. And I understand what you're saying, Councillor Muscat, and you have got some very good points. But I don't know where we need to be with incentive, but the incentive is only in line with what has happened in other centres as well. And they've got the facilities. So what does that tell you? So I think the demand for an aged care facility, if you walk around the region, you go to retirement functions now, they're all over you to try and get the facility happening. So demand won't be a problem.
Sorry, Councillor Goodluck, and then I will, throw back to Councillor Trevor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll just perhaps I'm not going to die in the ditch over the time frame. So if we want to go with a time frame, I'm happy to go there. But I do think the reality is market forces drive this type of development much more than any time frame from council does. At the end of the day, if the development is, is not getting pre-sales, etc., it's not going to go. It's not going to go ahead, regardless of the fact whether council's put a time frame on it. But I'm not going to die in the ditch over that. What my main issue is that we've got examples where Rockhampton and Mackay Regional Councils, both Central Queensland Regional Councils, attracted this type of development and entered into a negotiated infrastructure charge agreement at the amounts of $13,000 and $15,000. And if we were to just enter into an agreement at that dollar figure, it'd come out to the approximately the $1.5 million mark. It'd be a discount of $783,119, which is more than the $500,000 rebate scheme, but still a position of fairness from my perspective, because it aligns with decisions that were made by other councils, and also supported by evidence there that the lease agreements will limit the impact on that infrastructure, and also the statistics around the number of people that generally reside in these types of developments. So I'll just throw that out there to colleagues. I'd be happy to consider an amendment if we just scrap the $500,000 rebate on top, but go with the $13,000 and $15,000, which gives a discount of $783,119, I think, which to me is a fair position. I'm not sure if just...
I'll throw to Council. I do have a motion. I'll throw to Councillor Trevor soon. I'm not real comfortable using Mackay and Rockhampton figures in a Gladstone Regional Council decision we're about to make. I'm happy to take into consideration what they said, but the basis of where they got up their figures may have absolutely nothing to do with how we came to ours. And you just, when you really consider infrastructure charges in our region, you need to consider topography, and the topography in our region is far different to Mackay and Rockhampton. But I respect that they've done a lot of work to get to their figures. I'm not saying that we shouldn't use them, but I'm a bit sceptical about using them. I'll throw to Councillor Trevor, and then I'll see if Councillor Churchill wants to do his amendment.
Thanks, Matt. Look, to some extent I agree with Councillor Goodluck's commentary in relation to market forces, and I think all of you will probably agree with the sentiments I'm about to express, and that is a lot of our elderly residents were absolutely devastated and approached me when Derby Street fell over. That was a fantastic project promoted by you, Matt, and by Councillor Cindy Bush in the first instance, and supported to a large extent by all levels of government. But unfortunately, Derby Street is no more. And that is one of the reasons why we have to work overtime in relation to supporting this project, and in my opinion any other projects that might come to the table in relation to keeping our elderly in our community, because I agree with Councillor Churchill in relation to the impact this development, if it proceeds, will have on social services. But more importantly, there's not a day goes by in the Gladstone region community where our community is, there's not a day go by where our community is seeking additional extensions or development to our Gladstone Hospital. And one of the key considerations in relation to the expansion of any hospital in the community is demographics. The more elderly you have in your community, the bigger your hospital's going to be. And a classic example of this is Bundaberg Regional Council. Go down there and have a look at what retirement villages of this sort have had on the impact of improved health services in that community. You know, they're talking about a new hospital down there. The private and public system down there is just forging ahead in leaps and bounds. And what happens is that, as I say, the more elderly you're able to keep in the community, the better health services that come to your community. So if we're ever going to have new and improved and additional facilities at the Gladstone Hospital, which our community so desperately cries out for on a regular and continuous basis, we have to keep our elderly in this community, because one of the main considerations in relation to the expansion of any health services in the public hospital system is the demographics and the amount of elderly people that we have in our community. So there's all sorts of reasons why we should support this project, and that is why, in my humble opinion, substantial discounts should be offered to encourage developments of this type to come to our community and support our elderly and support our community and our health services generally.
Thank you.
Just before you throw to Councillor Churchill to do the amendment, I'll just make note, the figures, the $13,000 and the $15,000 figure are what comprise option 2. Irrespective of whether you add the extra $500,000, that's the figures we're basing the numbers on. We don't have to base it on Rockhampton or Mackay. We can just base it on the fact that there might be a reduced impact to our infrastructure, whatever you want to call it, but they are the figures.
Councillor Churchill, did you have an amendment to the motion?
Well, yes and no, I suppose. Matt, is that if I can be comforted at this particular stage, you indicated there before that our planning scheme will drive a particular timeline and if I can be comforted by that there is a 2-year timeline within our planning scheme. The reason why, and I'm sure that Councillor Trevor had raised that in advance as well, is that we don't want to be languishing on this, and we don't want to be sitting here in another 4 years wondering what could have happened or should have happened or must have happened. And how can I perhaps, through you, Mayor Matt, perhaps to our CEO or to Mark, our General Manager, comfort me at this stage with respect to the timeline, is that our planning scheme aligns or coincides with the operational works that still haven't been lodged. So if you can comfort me right now that there is a 2-year time limit for this project to commence, and I believe from what I read here that the proponents are indicating they're ready to go with stage 1 and stage 2. As I say, I'm an eternal optimist, but I've met with a number of proponents over the past number of years of this council indicating that they're ready to go, and then all of a sudden they haven't forged forward. So my question is, does the 2-year period from the planning scheme align with our infrastructure agreement?
Mark, would you be able to answer that, please?
Yeah, I'll just clarify that and a couple of other points in option 2. So the time limit that we're talking about, or the applicant is requesting, is that it aligns with the Act, which is just currency of the approval to last anywhere up to 6 years. So they can begin in 6 years. The incentive rebate scheme, which we adopted, stipulates that we want stage 1 completed within 2 years and the full development completed within 4 years. The applicant is requesting.
Mark, can I just pause there for a sec? Sorry, can you go back to that? Say that for me again. What are we offering?
We are stipulating and encouraging, if we provide the $500,000, that stage 1 is completed in 2 years, and subsequent stages are completed within 4. The Planning Act allows the approvals have currency for 6 years, so they can commence their construction at any time within the next 6 years. And that's what they're asking for, to give themselves flexibility.
Thanks. Sorry, Councillor Goodluck, I can't support that, giving a $1 million incentive to something that could start in 6 years. If we're trying to encourage aged care development in our community, we're not waiting 6 years. I'm not, anyway.
Yeah, look, I think that was the intent of... Sorry, I think that was the intent of my foreshadow amendment to the motion, but in light of what our General Manager has just said. Perhaps Councillor Goodluck might be enlightened by that, the 6 years, that if his original motion just articulated, be it a condition of shovel ready, dig the dirt, 2 years, Councillor Goodluck, if you're receptive to that, rather than going through a whole debate of amendments process, which I'm prepared to undergo, but I'd like to think that perhaps that you would want to, perhaps in light of that circumstances, embrace a small component that clearly articulates.
Thank you, Councillor Church. You're going to get there.
and then we can get on with the finalisation of the agenda item.
Thank you, Councillor Goodluck. If you can answer that.
Thank you. Just pointing out that because they have 6 years doesn't mean they will take 6 years. But Mark, under the current motion that has been moved and seconded, which is option 2, what is the timeline requirements under option 2 in the report?
There's none.
There is none, and under option...
Just the currency, yeah.
So under option 2, as it's read, there is no provision for us to act outside of the planning scheme currency periods. Is that correct?
Planning Act.
Planning Act, sorry.
Yep.
So in order to implement some sort of timeline, how do we go about that? As I said, I personally don't think it's necessary, but I'm not going to die in the ditch over it. So we can't move option 2 in its current, as it reads. What amendments do I need to make then to enable us to enforce some sort of timeline?
Would it be in line with our incentive scheme policy that stage 1 must be undertaken in 2 years and alternative stages within 4 years? Is that what you said before, Mark?
Yes, that is correct. If we wanted to provide some flexibility to the applicant, we could remove the 4-year completion for subsequent stages and allow them flexibility to do that in terms of establishing the market for the further stages. But we could stipulate the first stage needs to be completed in line with the investment scheme conditions. Incentive schemes.
Sorry, Councillor Trevor.
Could we not, Mark, just lift the cap of $500,000 to $1 million and make it a requirement that stage 1 be completed within 2 years? Sorry, commence within 2 years. Couldn't we just lift the cap of $500,000 and make the cap whatever the figure is we've reduced it by, in accordance with option 2? I think that's the better way to go about it, isn't it?
We're happy to adopt whatever the boardroom consider. Just so option 2 is also asking you to resolve a per unit charge outside of the infrastructure charge. So if what you're suggesting is it's cleaner just to increase the rebate and maintain our infrastructure charge resolution, then that may be a simpler way to do things. And then all you're doing is providing enhanced rebate, and then you can consider time frames along with that.
I think it's cleaner in that we're going outside our policy, and that's a matter for councillors, of course, but from my perspective, it's cleaner to lift the cap, increase it by whatever the amount is. We've agreed to reduce the charges down to 107,137, and then make it a requirement that the certain conditions be complied with within a period of 2 years, so that we don't run into conflict then with the Planning Act requirements. Planning Act timeframes, Mark. You know what I'm trying to say? It's cleaner for me just to do it that way. But look, I'll defer to your expertise on the matter. But I just looked at maybe forget about all that other stuff and let's just lift the cap and increase it and get it done.
Yeah. So, Mark, that would be an amendment to option 1. So, outline infrastructure charge for 2.3 million remains, and the current applicant can progress a request for a rebate in accordance with requirements of timeframes, and that the cap be increased to $1 million, which would be under delegated authority. That would reduce it by another $500,000. So if increase the cap, like Councillor Trevor's saying, that will be then for all other applications that they can then apply up to $1 million though. And that's, if that's what we're looking for, that's a good outcome. Is that the best way to word that? Over to you. I know that Councillor Goodluck's got a motion, but I think he's prepared to accept amendments.
Yeah, I maybe need Tanya or Lisa's input here. If what we're resolving here is to amend the incentive scheme by raising the cap to $1 million, is that right?
Yes, I was just thinking you could even do a variation of option 3 to apply council's infrastructure charges rebate scheme to an amount of $1 million, something like that. Then all the other conditions are the same. It's just the amount of the rebate that you're varying potentially. I don't know if that's simpler. Is that what you're intending, Councillor Trevor? So all of the other conditions that we would normally apply under the rebate scheme apply, it's just that the amount is double what is allowed for under the policy. Is that correct?
That is correct, and as long as the time limit of 2 years is enforced.
So that's part of
rather
the current
than
policy.
6.
Yes.
You, Councillor Goodluck has a question, then I'm going to take amendment.
Mark, I just want to, I'm not sure, I know stage 1 comprises of a residential care facility, 9 2-bedroom units and 2 3-bedroom units. Now, I know there's a whole range of process that you need to go through, operational works, etc., etc. Have we had anyone that's been successful in actually getting that size of a development completed within a 2-year period from the date of acceptance?
I'll need to defer to Shanti's expertise there.
That would be a difficult one to answer given the current market. It's not to say it couldn't be done. It would just be up to the developer to ensure that they could progress that in a timely manner.
Is it something that a developer's likely, I'm not sure whether this particular proponent has pre-sales locked in at the moment or whether they, I suspect they're probably waiting for their approvals before they go and try and procure pre-sales to a development of this nature. That's going to add another lengthy time period. And then, so I just don't want to see us, sorry, let me rephrase it. If in 2 years' time that this proponent is 6 months away from having stage 1 completed, they're powering along, they're doing their best to get there, are they locked in at 2 years, or do they have the provisions to then come and see council and say, hey, we've given it our best crack, but we're just going to miss the mark, can we get an extension?
Yep, there is provisions within the infrastructure agreement to do various methods to extend that currency. So there is options which governance might be able to confirm, like a deed of variation or enacting a force majeure. That's entitlements under the infrastructure agreement. Okay,
thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to perhaps amend my motion to option 3, to apply council's infrastructure charges rebate scheme, varied to apply greater flexibility. I'd like to amend the dollar value to $783,119, which is in line with the principles we were looking at around option 2 on the $13,000 and $15,000 figures. It's just shy of the $1 million mark, but I think there's some evidence to support those figures rather than just plucking out $1 million. I'm not sure if other councillors would be supportive of that or not.
Just the cap.
That raises that figure from 500,000 to 783,119 just on this circumstance, in line with the evidence provided in the report, and that still allows you guys to apply the timelines that councillors under the infrastructure scheme. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's fine. Item 3 actually says to align with the Planning Act, not the rebate scheme, but we know what you mean. The actual reverse of that. In line with the, Mark, correct me, that would be in lining with our incentive scheme, not the Planning Act. That's correct?
Yes, that's correct, sorry.
Thank you. Now, that's a significant change to the original motion, so I'm going to go to the seconder of the motion, Councillor Hanson.
You're happy to second that, but we have to amend that, option 3 to what you just said as well. We can't let it go out like that.
No, And are we able to get that on the screen? I think it's a significant motion. Councillors would like to read the wording.
Can I just ask Shantae just to double check the maths there? The original AIC we had was for 2354476. The adoption of the new per unit charge would reduce that, and the 500,000 was going to reduce that to 1,071,357. Is that correct?
Councillor Goodluck was suggesting 783,190.
Sorry, I just, under option 2, Mark, you've got your total charge in your graph there, including the existing use credit, based on the revised charge rates, and that figure comes to 1,571,357 cents. So if you take that away from the original 2,354,000, I get 783,119. Is that right?
Checking with the accountant.
I better check my maths.
That is correct. Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
The effect of the applicant's request, though, was to reduce that 2,354 down to 1 million through reducing the per unit charge and applying the 500,000 discount.
Do you know? I'm happy to consider that, but do you know, Mark, under the and you may well not, the Mackay and Rockhampton Regional Council instances, did they obviously had a reduced charge rate? Did they also have an incentive scheme such as ours that was applied on top of that reduced charge rate?
I'm not sure if they did at the time, Councillor Goodluck, to be honest.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Trevor, I've got to move in a second, I'll come back there.
Thanks, Mayor. The $1 million wasn't plucked out of air. It's a figure as espoused by Mark, and really it's just an increase of the infrastructure charge cap of 500,000 to 1 million. In my humble opinion, that's very clean, and that was the basis upon which my argument has proceeded for the last hour, to which I understood most councillors were in agreement.
Thank you. I'm thinking, Councillor Goodluck, that the council enter into infrastructure agreement provided for a rebate of up to 1 million be applied, and that would leave in accordance with the conditions and timeframes of the rebate scheme. And whether they say that, I mean, it should say Gladstone Regional Council rebate scheme or something along those lines, so we know for the minutes, or council's rebate scheme. Or are you happy to leave it at 783, and I will put the motion and we'll see how it gets up.
Mr Mayor, from what I'm reading in the report, we've got other Central Queensland councils, Rockhampton, Mackay, who entered into this infrastructure agreement for those figures. The applicants rightly pointed that out, and from my way of looking, they've also sought to take advantage of our rebate scheme, which I'm not sure whether Rockhampton or Mackay have a similar scheme or had a similar scheme. I don't believe that they did. So I think the figure is a fair and reasonable figure. It's still $783,000 of a rebate. It's backed by some evidence, as noted in the report, and I'm happy for that. It's pretty close to the $1 million magic figure.
Thank you, Councillor Goodluck. I'm going to put the motion, if the second is still happy with that. It is moved by Councillor Goodluck, seconded by Councillor Hanson, what you see on your screen. And for those listening online, it's that council enter into an infrastructure agreement providing for a rebate of $783,119 to be applied in accordance with the conditions and timeframes of council's rebate scheme. I put that motion. All in favour? Those against? The motion's carried. Thank you. That's all right. We might break for 5 minutes. For those on the live stream, we'll be back 5-10 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council.
Thank you. Welcome back. Next item on the agenda is... Microphone on. Next item on the agenda is item G 3.4, which is our Gates and Grids policy, and I'll hand over to the the Manager of Governance, Tanya.
Good afternoon, councillors. This report is presented as a finance, governance and risk report as it's a policy. However, today I'll be handing over to Anna to present, as this has largely been a strategic asset performance initiative.
Thanks. I was just going to give a bit of a background today because it has been some time since the matter was previously brought to council, and there's also been we've welcomed a couple of new councillors as well. So council officers across the business have been outworking council's resolution from the 21st of May 2019 to draft a new Gates and Grids policy that reflects transferring ownership of Gates and Grids to council, and at the end of the useful life of a gate or grid, the structure is either removed or replaced at the request of the landholder, and the cost is met by the impacted landowners. In terms of maintained versus unmaintained roads, when we did all the work leading up to the general meeting on the 21st of May 2019, council officers had only really considered taking back maintenance responsibilities for gates and grids located on council's maintained road network. As such, the scope of works for the policy review initially only covered gates and grids on the maintained roads. Whilst we were consulting internally on the proposed gates and grids policy, our legal officers had been investing considerable time and energy dealing with structures that had been placed across a number of unmaintained roads within the region. For clarity, unmaintained roads include unformed and unmade roads, as well as those that are formed and made but extend beyond the boundary to which we maintain our roads. In response to that matter, council officers have been provided feedback on the proposed draft, and that the draft should include details on how gates and grids located on unmaintained roads should be dealt with within the region. Officers really don't have a good understanding of how many gates and grids are located on unmaintained roads throughout the region, as their works and inspections are typically limited to the maintained road network. Given the nature of unmaintained roads, the risk of vehicle incidents occurring that are directly attributed to the gate or grid is considered to be lower than for maintained roads. Also, by treating gates and grids in the unmaintained road network the same as gates and grids in maintained roads, we'll be exposing our staff to elevated workplace health and safety risks in undertaking their inspections and also carrying out the actual maintenance activities. The cost per grid to maintain will also be significantly higher, as there'll be greater mobilisation and demobilisation costs due to the fact that these grids on unmaintained roads will be further away from our depots, and also we don't maintain the roads in between each grid location. There could also be a creep in terms of road area maintained by council, as each grid approach will be required to be maintained by council, which could then lead to customer expectations that we will then maintain the road in between different grids on unmaintained road sections. For these reasons, the proposed draft policy treats gates and grids on unmaintained roads slightly different, in that landholders deriving the benefits from the gates and grids on unmaintained roads will retain the risk and liability for the gates and grids. The landowners will also be responsible for maintaining the grids and gates on unmaintained roads, and they will also need to seek approval to work on roads in order to take any works on the gates and grids that are located on our unmaintained roads. We realise this is a new position, so we have been able to make contact with 24 landholders who we were able to engage with during the previous engagement activities around gates and grids. Of those 24 that we were able to contact, many had grids that were located on maintained roads, and of those 24 contacted, 21 were supportive of our proposed approach to unmaintained road gates and grids. Another issue that arose during the development of the policy was around how do we transfer ownership from the existing landholder across to council. We obtained some legal advice during the drafting of the policy, and that's recommended that council seeks agreement in writing from landholders to transfer the ownership from themselves across to council in our maintained road network. In the event that landholders do not agree to transfer ownership, council will look to remove the gates and grids on the maintained road network, and landholders will maintain the risk and liability for those gates and grids until such time as the gates and grids can be removed from the network. The policy is also supported by a corporate standard, and it's in that corporate standard that we've really fleshed out how our officers will go about implementing the policies, and that's where we've taken into consideration a lot of the community feedback around how we'll actually communicate with our landholders prior to ever removing a gate and grid from the network, and also giving them the opportunity to salvage materials from any gate and grid that is removed from the network, and if there are any special conditions that the landholders would like us to be considerate of when we do works on our gates and grids network as well. So I'm happy to take any questions or concerns.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Sorry, so just in short, we're adopting the policy as we previously had it, except council will take over ownership as we previously agreed for gates and grids in maintained roads, just not unmaintained roads. Thank you. Happy to support the recommendation.
Mayor Matt, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Braithwaite, then Churchill.
Thank you, Mayor Matt. Anna, there's a road that comes to mind where it isn't maintained, but it's actually reasonably well used is the one from Cedar Vale that goes around the bottom. I think it connects up with Mungungo, but it actually ends up going back up the hill to Coombe at Tops. There's the likes of some pretty hefty sort of gear through there that the likes of some of the crossings and that they're involved with that. You know, I know it's not maintained, but in the same token, it's quite reasonably well used. In that sort of instance, is it possible that if the landowner takes over that, they actually lock the gate and not allow anything through?
No, there's still legislation that relates to how infrastructure needs to be located on our roads, and they would still need to seek our approval, and our approval would never be that it can be a locked gate if it's a road reserve.
Any other questions to Anna or Tanya, please? Councillor Churchill, sorry.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mayor Matt. It would be remiss of me, and I know a lot of people got to this stage with this policy and it's been adopted, but I just wanted to re-emphasise the efforts of past Councillor Peter Masters, who I'm sure will be watching and making sure that the policy that we put in place is continued to be implemented. I just want to put that on the record. My question was, just a point of clarification, in relation now to the unmaintained road, and I had unmaintained road and the gate or grid is no longer needed, or is no longer required, no longer needed, no longer wanted. Does the owner remove it, or do they contract us to remove it, or are we giving them a notice to remove? I'm just trying to understand the finite operational point of it on a unmaintained road, and it's the gate or grid, more so the grid, no longer required.
So if it's the landholder's choice to remove a gate or grid from an unmaintained road, they would still need to make an application to council for a works on road permit, because it will require them to be working on the road. And then that's when we take in consideration the location of the road, the risks that it poses as to what conditions would be implemented, and then as to whether or not who is best placed to manage those risks and do the actual work. So there is the opportunity that they could enter into a private works agreement with council to undertake the work, but that would be decided on a case-by-case basis through the application process.
Thanks for that. So just my final part is on a case-by-case basis. So if they don't enter into an agreement and they do it themselves, then council will go and inspect to ensure that it complies or meets a compliance level in the aftermath?
Well, generally those roads, they're not maintained, so they're not part of our inspection process, and they can vary from being unformed, maintained, unmade roads, right through to it just happens to be outside of the road network that we maintain. So it would depend again on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
A lot of them will be property access roads as well, which just goes to one property, and if they want to remove a gate or grid from there that accesses the homestead, then I don't know that we're going to want to get involved in that. Councillor Goodluck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the current policy that we have in place now, do landholders on unmaintained roads have to seek approval to maintain that infrastructure from council? Not the draft. My understanding is the draft one, we're saying that they do. Is that a shift from the current policy as far as, you know, I'm trying to ascertain, have we always sought a landholder to get approval from council to maintain a grid on an unmaintained road that essentially a lot of the time, as the Mayor's just said, it's basically their driveway?
Council does have a position, and it's covered under local law, where if you want to do works in a road, you must obtain council's permission. So currently...
And that's an unmaintained road?
That's every road.
All roads?
All roads.
So for the purpose of grids, do our rural landholders on unmaintained roads right now have to seek that approval from council? Is that, if it's in policy, is that in practice how we've been operating?
It is our policy position. So under the current policy, section 6.5.1.1, it does require an applicant to provide council with a minimum of 5 days business days notice before undertaking any work, installation or maintenance in relation to a gate and or grid on a road. And that particular policy covered both maintained and unmaintained roads. So that was the policy position. But one of the reasons why we've undertaken a fairly extensive review and gone out to community consultation is we know that the policy wasn't necessarily always complied with.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Hanson?
Happy to move the policy.
Move Councillor Hanson, seconding Councillor Churchill. Any further discussion? Put the motion. All in favour? Motion's carried. Thank you. We'll move to the next item. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Anna. Next item on the agenda, which is G 3.5, Latrobe City Council Statement of Commitment, Impending Power Station Closures and Related Transmission Impacts on Host Municipalities. To the General Manager of Strategy and Transformation, Carly.
Good afternoon. We do also have our Economic Development Specialist on site there. I think he's just making his way into the room now.
Yeah, he is.
Thank you. So recently, Latrobe City Council endorsed a policy position which was positioning Latrobe City for a low carbon emission future. It identified that international and Australia policies are being introduced to reduce greenhouse emissions in response to growing concern about climate change and sustainability. It also stated that these policies and constraints on carbon-based emissions have significant implications for the ongoing sustainability, vitality and well-being of not only Latrobe City, but other regional communities as well. So Latrobe City Council have requested that our council consider signing a statement of commitment, calling on the Australian and state governments to develop a policy agenda and commitment to supporting councils who currently host coal-fired power generation infrastructure in the transition from a carbon-based economy. There's 3 guiding principles that they propose in the statement: economic diversification and utilisation of carbon from coal, secure and stable baseload power through emission technologies, and effective planning, engagement and consultation in support of the transition. The report for you today is to consider their request in signing the statement of commitment.
Thanks, Carly.
Any questions,
Gary, do you want to add anything to that?
Thanks, Mayor and Carly. In terms of just a bit of background on Latrobe for the people listening in, like the Gladstone region, Latrobe is heavily reliant on coal-fired power generation and coal mining as well. And they're also the home of the Hazelwood facility that was closed in 2017. And I think we've seen recent documentaries and things like that on it just recently. They're certainly a region that's looking to maximise their opportunities in the future as they evolve through a transition economy away from a carbon-based economy.
Thank you. Councillors, questions to Carly or Gary, please. Councillor Muscat.
Well, it's not really a question. I think it's a great thing that this council is doing this. Obviously, come to this situation through their own experience, and I think we can gain a lot of understanding and knowledge through what they've gone through. And I have read the document, and I know that acknowledge that we've done some consultation with some of the industry groups, and they don't see any issue. And I will love our council to be part of I guess this in a way request to the other levels of government to take some of the some of the situations in a way. I'm sure they're taking it seriously, but to make sure that they know that we also want them to continue on that path of of understanding where our economy is going.
Thank you. Questions or statements from Councillor Goodluck and Churchill?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gary, reading the report, I actually thought it was a reasonable document, but when I went through the document and read the document, I'm trying to ascertain whether or not this is the Latrobe City Council's advocacy document for coal-fired power generation. So in our, and it's got a lot of really great content in the policy document, but even in the statement of commitment, in our report it states that secure and stable baseload power through low emission technologies. What the actual statement of commitment says is secure and stable electricity generation through the, low emission technologies, and therefore there is a place for coal-fired power generation. So the two statements are different. One, the restatement in our report, may well, if you were looking at that, it may well come up that there's a place for low emission coal-fired power generation. But under the actual Latrobe City document, it quite specifically states coal-fired power generation, which is not the only form of low emission technology, obviously. So I'm not sure from your perspective, what do you think this document is? Because I personally, I absolutely think that we need to be looking 50 years, 100 years into the future for our region, and obviously we've got carbon intensive industries, and it's important that we look at a just transition and what is the industry base of Gladstone going to look like in that 50 years or 100 years. But it's not necessarily guaranteed to be low emission coal-fired power generation. It may be, but so I'm trying to ascertain, is this a document that looks at just transition, or is this a document from the Latrobe City Council trying to advocate for coal-fired power generation?
Thanks, Councillor Goodluck. So in my discussions with Latrobe City Council and the Latrobe Development Commission down there that was set up in the wake of the Hazelwood closure, it's really about that just transition economy. They're the home to 3 other brown coal-fired power stations in the region. So obviously what they're looking at is like this region, there's a lot of legacy infrastructure that is there and that has been invested in terms of power generation and power distribution and power management and electricity management. So they were looking at obviously low emissions technologies as it relates to their resource that still sits there, which is the brown coal, but also other low emission technologies that met the outcomes and the aims of a transition economy. It didn't articulate what those technologies were at the moment. Obviously they're still looking at them, but obviously they've still got a massive resource down there in terms of their coal resource that they're looking at exploiting is not the right word, utilising in a transition economy and an ongoing operation. So that's looking at low emissions technologies, is looking at that transition economy in the long term and the long run, and that's essentially what they're talking about here. They have that resource there, and they'd like to utilise that resource in a transition economy, which means low emission technologies and other creative technologies as well.
I'm sure we have Councillor Churchill and Trevor.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Matt. Gary, just I suppose, and I've read through the documentation, find it quite enlightening and understanding the importance, I suppose, of transitioning, transformation, diversification, call it whatever you may like, but I was wanting to refer to their document, which is dated the 6th of April 2010, which is 10 years ago. It seems to have been a time 10 years ago that they're indicating in the document that the population of that area, interestingly, and I know the area quite well, Morwell, Traralgon, place called Churchill, as such, a university there. But in knowing, and I've been in that area on a number of occasions, their population in 2010 was 73,000 people, residents, ratepayers. But they've articulated in there that as a result of this document, 10 years ago, that the diversification would increase their population. That's what it's indicating. Population is growing steadily. Have you got a comparative to indicate that their document from 10 years ago has increased their population from that 73,000? Because there's another document later on that conflicts that says, as a result of it, their population has declined. Anyway.
Probably not at the moment, Councillor Churchill, but I'll take that one on notice and certainly come back to you.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah,
I mean, these documents and advice, when they are produced, try to generate some level of vision and a determination on what the future is going to be looking like. And from a policy context, that's what we're talking about here today. What's the Gladstone City, what's the Gladstone region going to look like with its transition or diversification, as Councillor Khan indicated, 50 years and 100 years' time, but already in those 10 years period, the information seems to be conflicting. That's just my estimate. The other question that I've got, on page 4 of that document, they've actually they're indicating there they've taken on board the lessons learnt from the electricity sector privatisation experience of the past, and they've now determined that the way forward for their area of this great country is to take their community with them. And they've indicated in there engaging with their community. We've got the report before us here today, and I know, as Councillor Muscat indicated, that you've spoken to a couple of our industry leaders. Can you give me some indication as to how much we have engaged with our community? Latrobe's indicating that they went and engaged with all of their community. Leadership is about engaging with the people and bringing the people with you on that transition. What are you proposing here today for us as current leaders and elected members of our region as to how we take our residents and ratepayers with us on this journey, if we were to support it?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Churchill. So I suppose this is, the first reaction is this is first steps. This is a first consideration of the transition policy that we're looking at here at the moment. And I totally agree. It's a community journey that needs to be taken. And given our community is heavily invested in this and has been heavily invested in this for a long time and will continue to be heavily invested, I think it's important that the community are engaged and brought on the journey, on the transition journey. And certainly part of the statement of commitment is looking at, developing policy, getting policy out there, and policy needs to be developed on the back of community acknowledgement and support. So this is something that can't be done in isolation, has to be done with the community. But I'm also talking about our industrial community and our industrial stakeholders and partners as well. So it was important to speak to certainly the key stakeholders in this sector early on and see what their position was. And I think I say in the report I spoke to the coal-fired power generators and that. And certainly, that's something that they need to deal with moving forward, and we're supportive of the acknowledgement or the review of what a transition economy or transition policy might look like in the future.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm prepared to accept that, but I'm also, at the same time, the eternal optimist that at any type of diversification, if it comes at a cost, it's our residents and ratepayers that would like to know what the associated costs are going to be in any policy development.
Yeah, and I think the statement of commitment is calling for the Australian government to invest in that transition and to meet those costs or be a partner in those costs as well. So, so hopefully that's what we'd be looking for in a transition economy.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think you've touched on the key point. You said the Australian government, and I read that information through the Australian government's proposed CPRS program. You've indicated that the Australian government will pay for that, or they might partner with it.
I'm not making policy statements on behalf of the Australian government, Councillor Churchill.
Councillor Trevor?
Thanks, Councillor. Thank you, Mayor Matt. From my perspective, Gary, I was equally confused as Councillor Goodluck is, and that is what was the true intent of this document that was being presented to the Gladstone Regional Council, which is some thousands of kilometres away from the Latrobe Valley and the Latrobe City Council. But What I took out of the material that you presented to us was, interestingly, was that Council does not currently have a firm position in relation to our transitioning economy, whether that be local, whether that be national, whether that be global. And I think it's probably imperative, us being the industrial capital of Australia and the port city to the world, to be very much aware of how and what is happening out there in the transitioning world, because if we don't follow the lead in relation to what the world is doing and what our state and national governments are doing, we're going to be left behind, and we probably would be derelict in our duty to the citizens of our region and the people who are employed in this region to be not following the action closely, particularly if we're if the Latrobe City Council is asking us for support in relation to the federal government providing financial assistance to our constituency to transition. You know, I started reading this report and I thought, now, is this coming from a position of demonising coal? Is it coming from a position of supporting coal? And as Councillor Goodluck has quite rightly pointed out, I couldn't work out the correlation between what they are actually trying to achieve by seeking our endorsement, other than that the Australian government, if we were to support their position, may be willing to fund all of the councils who are similarly inclined. So for me it was very confusing, but what I did take out of everything is that we probably do need to consider a policy position in relation to transitioning to a low carbon future. Now, for a person who is actively and openly and publicly supportive of the coal industry, I also recognise that the world is transitioning into a low emissions, low carbon future, and if we continue to ignore the way in which the world is proceeding, we will be sadly left behind and sadly let down our constituency. Now, the problem is we're getting mixed messages from all levels of government. We've got a very supportive state government in relation to low emissions technology, solar farms. The problem with solar farms, of course, is that it doesn't provide the base load power, so we've got to have our coal generators to keep the base load power happening, otherwise the lights go off when the sun doesn't shine. So we've got all this mix, and then we've got the federal government supporting, you know, the revamp of the Collinsville Power Station, which may then cause some problems with NAG in Gladstone, with the closure of that facility and the loss of jobs in our community in relation to that. But there's nothing at this point in time to replace base load power, and the base load power comes from our coal generation, of course, coal generators. But you know, you would be very much aware that technology is advancing so quickly now that there is clean technology that's going to become apparent in the not too distant future, just like LNG. Was only talked about in 2008, and now in 2016 we have 3 LNG plants on Curtis Island. We have a multiplicity of plants throughout the world and in the Northern Territory and Western Australia. That technology was still being talked about, let alone actually being put on the ground back in 2008 when the announcements were made in relation to that clean technology happening. So I think from my perspective, I've got to climb aboard. You know, I may not be around to see a lot of this, but what I can say, and I do know that, you know, coal's going to be around for the next 50 to 100 years, and hundreds of clean coal plants are being built all over the world as we speak, with clean coal technology. So coal isn't about to die in the short term. It's going to be around for 50 to 100 years, and as you know, I'm a big supporter of it. But regardless of that, I am also, logic tells me that we do, I believe, Mayor, that we should have a policy in relation to our position in relation to our transitioning economy. Like, we have the biofuels industry, which our Mayor has been incredibly supportive of. We have LNG now, we have solar, we have wind, and we have coal. But sooner or later, I think, with that transitioning occurring and the voice of the people speaking much more loudly than they currently are, we will be moving to that new clean green technology. So I'd love to see a policy as to how we're going to transition in 50 to 100 years, as Councillor Goodluck has pointed out. How we're going to transition when we do stop burning coal. I'm not sure how that's all going to happen with baseload power and stuff like that, but when you talk of the new emerging massive clean energy that is hydrogen, it's out there, it's coming, and at some point, we have to seriously consider it. To take away coal now would be economic Armageddon. That has been proved over the last 3 months with COVID. Every other industry in Australia has shut down except the coal industry. And the coal is probably going to drive us out of the recession that we're currently in. So the mixed messages in this stuff is I can't agree to support the Latrobe City Council because I just don't know what they're asking me to do other than to support a process whereby the Australian government will assist us in providing financial relief to transition. But I don't think that's enough, and I think what's important is that we have a policy framework in place so that future leaders around this table, long after I'm gone, will be able to transition this economy into a low carbon future without the loss of jobs. Because, as I say, the coal industry is the only industry that stood strong in the face of COVID. When everyone else told us that it should, when a lot of people said it should be gone, it's the one that's now driving our economy and likely to drive us out of economic Armageddon.
Thank you, Councillor Trevor. Other councillors' questions, please? No? Councillor Muscat.
I think, there's a number of good points that Councillor Trevor raises. I don't think this is a document that is, going into some of those topics. It's, in a way, a statement of commitment of councils and regions that are dependent on this type of industry, calling for the government, to the other two tiers of government, to take into consideration the impact and the consequences of their decisions on the lives of those people that depend on some of these industries. So, and it's not just about opening and closing new generators or companies. It's about understanding it more holistically too. I mean, what are the jobs that we're going to need in the future? What are the what else is there? And for them to take into consideration the needs of each of those regions, individual regions that and I'm sure a lot of the councils that might or might not go in, or that have been approached about this statement of commitment, they will have all different needs. So it's about calling for those for the state and federal government to work closely with those communities to understand the impact of what's going to happen and to make this transition, which is going to happen, to make it as just as possible. It isn't about, I don't see this as definitely a low carbon document, but that's not the intent of this. This is saying that this is going to happen, and we want the government to make sure that they work closely with councils minimise the impact on the people that will be suffering the consequences. So, and that's not necessarily about the type of energy, or it's also about, it's about jobs. It's about what are we going to do with the people that are not going to be able to work in some of those industries that are going to be faced off, or we need to train them. Okay, so how do we get it? How do we go around that? So what do we do with the infrastructure that is not longer there, or it's not needed any longer? So what kind of, we need the governments to understand, we need the other tiers of government to understand those situations. It's not, we're just going to end up with obsolete infrastructure there, and what are we going to do with it? So it's about a more of a holistic approach, and to send the message to the other tiers of government that we are interested in working with them to lessen the impacts, the negative impacts that the transition in the economy might have on our region. So I don't want to make it about, for and against. This is about working towards something that is going to be more just and fair.
Thank you, Councillor Muscat. Before I throw around the table, I'd like to just point out that I'm on the Queensland Government's Energy Skills Advisory Committee, so already working towards a just transition for our community and our neighbouring communities, particularly Central Queensland with Stanwell and Callide. While I would be very happy to stand next to the Mayor of Latrobe City and say we need to diversify and we need to invest more in our local communities and be shoulder to shoulder to the Mayor of Banana and the Mayor of Rockhampton, who have coal-fired power stations as well, this is a statement of commitment that is beneficial and drafted by Latrobe City Council, and I respect that for them. It benefits them, and it's worded in a way that it benefits them. There are some catchphrases in the statements and the principles that you could say are good for Gladstone, or others may not be good for Gladstone. I think we can stand united with our fellow mayors and councillors around the country who have coal-fired power stations to say, we're more than happy to transition into renewables and to hydrogen and to biofuels. But like Councillor Trevor said, I believe the coal industry has a brighter future than some might seem to think. And our coal-fired power station has a longer life than it currently is anticipated in this report. And that's not Gary's report. That's what they've picked figures from a document that says that's their life, but that's based on a contract they've got with BSL. So they can certainly, our power station can ramp up and ramp down. You won't find a better power station anywhere in the world that can work hand in hand with renewable energy. So when the sun is shining, the coal-fired power station in Gladstone can ramp down. And when it's not, and the wind is not, then our coal-fired power station can ramp up. And there is potential other opportunities for our coal-fired power station that maybe, I'm not sure how the ones in Latrobe City operate or in their region operate, but ours is unique, and I don't think we need to sign a statement of commitment to be hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder with our brothers and sisters in other local government areas. We can say, yep, we support our coal-fired power stations, we support renewables, we support jobs, but I don't know that I'm happy to support this statement of commitment at the moment, because as I've heard from at least two councillors, it sends mixed messages, and I don't think it sends the right and correct message for Gladstone Regional Council and Gladstone Region and the future of our power station at NRG. That's my position on this. Any other councillors like to make comment? Councillor Goodluck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd be happy to sign the statement of commitment. I do think it's principle 2 sort of underlines for me a statement of support for low emission coal-fired power generation. So it's sort of not necessarily what the headline of principle 2 is stating, but the fact is, I think we all acknowledge that coal is going to play a great part in our energy mix for a long time to come. But if you look at the science of climate change, if you look at the global demand, there are other countries. I think Germany has just committed to phasing out its entire coal-fired power generation by 2038. I think this year will be the first year in history that the emissions from coal-fired power generation will actually decrease. There are countries like China and India that are building new power stations, but there are many, many other countries that are scaling out their coal-fired power generation. So we're going to be relying on coal-fired power generation for some time, but the critical importance for our community is not to be fixated on an ideological or a philosophical position. It's about looking to the future, what will be beneficial for our people. And the reality is, I think that we have to look at just transitions. We have to look at what happens. If you look at what happened in Hazelbrook, with 5 months' notice, the power company came out and told everyone we're shutting down 8 years ahead of schedule. That is not, touch wood, that'll never happen here in Gladstone, but the reality is it could happen here in Gladstone. And we won't know until 5 months out when the announcement's made, if that does happen. And then all of our other industries, the cascading effect from that, that's a whole bunch of risk that I think as a community we can't really afford to let go unnoticed. I do think, I agree, we need, as a council and as a community, we need to have this discussion. We need to form a position. I don't think there's any harm in signing this statement of commitment and joining with our fellow council and community down in Latrobe and calling for state and federal governments across the nation to work with councils and local communities about piloting a path forward. And I think that's important. It's just as important for us. Whilst we are a very different community than Latrobe, it's just as critical for us moving forward. And I don't see any harm in signing this statement of commitment. And then at the same time, I think we should do our own work and formulate our own policy position and exactly where we need to be, as Latrobe has done. And then maybe we can send them a copy of our statement of commitment and get them and ask them for their support in 12 months or so as well.
Councillor Churchill?
Yeah, thanks for that, Mayor Matt. Just a couple of other quick questions, because I'm conflicted with this when we talk about lowering carbon emissions, reducing greenhouse emissions and the whole CPRS process, but I'm trying to find where it is that we've actually had an approach directly from the Latrobe City Council, be it the Mayor or be it the CEO's office, direct to this council. Is that the case, or is this a document that's been distributed to other local governments? So my question's two-pronged. Is this a personal approach? The Mayor's been in contact with, or the CEO's been in contact with us, asking us specifically, and what other councils or what other local governments of the 500 across the nation are supportive of? I'm sure we're not the only council that they've targeted, and you've indicated that in your advice, Gary, but how many other local governments have decided to join in signing this statement of commitment in not knowing if there's going to be any associated costs involved with it?
Yeah, happy to give you an update on that, Councillor Churchill. So it was a direct approach from Latrobe City Council to each of the listed 15 councils or identified impacted or hosting councils of coal-fired power that have an impending closure. So an update on where they are at the moment. So 2 councils have already advised that they won't be proceeding, being Toowoomba and Rockhampton. I won't be signing the statement of commitment. All other councils are currently in the process of considering the opportunity with the statement of commitment. Banana Shire Council has endorsed the statement of commitment, and so has the Shire of Collie in Western Australia out of that list that's in the document. That's as an advice, an update from Latrobe Shire Council as of yesterday.
Do you know, sorry, Councillor Churchill, cutting off there a second, do you know if the Banana Shire was by resolution of council?
I can't confirm that, Mayor. All I've got is that they've endorsed the statement of commitment and they'll be participating. That's something I can follow up.
Be interesting to see that outcome. Thanks. Anyway, any further questions, or Councillor Branthwaite?
Yeah, just on the option 2 here that has been proposed. It said obviously don't sign the statement of commitment, but there is the motion that is suggested at the bottom of that is that a report be presented to council considering council's position on transitioning economy within 6 months. This could be a really good opportunity for us to possibly roadmap our own destiny based on probably what Latrobe is doing. Maybe, obviously, there's not a timeline, or you must sign it within the next 3 weeks to be part of this movement as such. So I'm just wondering whether we actually take a step back and just see exactly how this affects us and what we can do in our own backyard that actually reflects what we're doing here.
Could do any option there, but I just look. Someone would need to move either an officer's recommendation or an alternative. Councillor Goodluck.
I was just going to move option 1 to sign the statement of commitment.
Thank you, Councillor Muscat. I have a mover in Councillor Muscat that we accept the officer's recommendation to sign the statement of commitment. Seconder, please. Second, and Councillor Goodluck.
I'd like to.
And Councillor Goodluck would like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering if we could add the dot point 2 from option 2 to the officer's recommendation or the motion, because I do think that's important work. I don't see any reason why we can't sign this statement. If you look at the statement of commitment, it quite clearly has a supportive position for coal-fired power generation in Principle 2, as I pointed out earlier, and so I think that should alleviate anyone's concerns around that. It's mainly about it's an opportunity to partner with a fellow council, and obviously other councils are on board in the Central Queensland area as well. Some aren't. I don't think there's any harm in us being able to advocate collaboratively to state and federal governments to move forward, and then if the mover of the motion, Councillor Muscat, was happy to consider it, I'd like to add, as I said, that point number 2, that a report be presented to council considering council's position on the transitioning economy within 6 months. I think that's a good, valuable piece of work that we can do to help us move forward.
Thank you. Councillor Muscat, you happy with that?
Yeah, I was actually under the impression that we're probably going to get some kind of report in the future in relation to transitioning economy.
No, not unless you put it in the motion now.
Yeah, but no, that was, that's, I think that's also a very valuable point, and I agree with what Councillor Braithwaite said too. I mean, we can definitely work on what we want to see, but one thing doesn't really take away from the other. We can do both. So yes, I will be very happy to add that point 2 into the motion.
Thank you. So the mover and seconder. Sorry, Carly, you wanted to speak before I put the motion?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know I have found an update. On the 14th of February, it went to the Banana Shire Council. So, and it was, the resolution was to support the draft statement of commitment.
Thank you for that. But Rockhampton, now the neighbouring council voted against, so 1 for, 1 against, and now it's our turn to vote. We have a motion that it be, we sign it, and with the point 2 that a report come to council in 6 months. Moved by Councillor Muscat, seconded by Councillor Goodluck. All in favour? Those against? The motion is lost. I have an alternative motion, please.
I'd like to call a division.
Yes, division called. Those in favour? Councillor Goodluck, Councillor Braithwaite, Councillor Muscat and Councillor Hanson in favour of the motion. Those against? Councillor O'Grady, Councillor Trevor, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Churchill and myself. The motion is lost. We have an alternative motion, please.
I have an alternate motion, Mayor, that a report be presented to council considering council's position on transitioning economy within 6 months.
Thank you, Councillor Trevor. Councillor Churchill, would you like to second that?
I'd be pleased to second that.
Thank you. I have a motion that a report be presented to council considering council's position on transitioning economy within 6 months. Moved by Councillor Trevor, seconded by Councillor Churchill. Which
Sorry,
Councillor
Mr. Mayor.
Goodluck would like to speak?
Just questioning, the purpose of the report is to allow council to consider us signing the Latrobe City Council's statement of commitment. I don't know, as a governance matter, do we have to deal with the purpose of the report in the resolution?
There is an alternative option in the report under option 2 that would close out that matter and also accommodate the request for a report on transitioning economy if council found their way to support that.
If being the second of the motion, at the move of the motion, Councillor Trevor, if you'd be prepared to indicate that we're not making a decision either way, we're not signing it or we are signing it or whatever the case might be, we're looking effectively for a report. That's the basis of me seconding your motion, was that you're indicating let's get a report on transitioning economy, and when we've got that report, I would then strongly emphasise that that report would articulate our position and policy development that may very well be consistent with the Latrobe City Council, but it might not be too.
Correct.
Tanya or...
I agree with Councillor Goodluck. We've got to deal with the issue, not form a completely different motion.
So there is an alternative there to decline, but we can also note the officer's report. I'm not sure whether Lisa or Tanya can answer that for me, but...
I don't necessarily believe you need to decide either way on the motion as it was put in terms of adopting or not adopting. By not resolving to sign, you're effectively not signing it. But I agree with the point that's raised by Councillor Churchill. You're seeking further information before a decision is made, essentially. So they're two different things to me, whether you're deciding yes today, no, we will not sign this, or whether you're deciding we'd like some more information and to consider our position in 6 months' time. It's slightly different meanings to me.
Well, then, for further clarification, and I suppose and for good governance, we're really only dealing with one word in relation to the option 2. Instead of decline, Council defer the opportunity to sign the Latrobe City Council Statement of Commitment and a report be presented to Council considering Council's position within that 6 months, because, as I said there before, once we get the report, it may strengthen our informed decision to sign the statement, or it might not.
Before I go to Councillor Muscat, Councillor Trevor, you mover of the motion, are you happy to add that in, or are you happy as it stands?
Happy as it stands, Mayor.
You, Councillor Muscat?
I was just going to say that I guess obviously I would prefer to go with option 1, but that wasn't possible, so I would love to see us deferring it. And that also will give us an opportunity to see, I guess it's important for some people around the table to understand what other councils are doing. I guess it is quite sad to see that we're going to, one of the reasons why we decide not to sign this is because Rockhampton Council isn't.
No one said that.
Yeah.
No one said that.
Well, it's just that might give us an opportunity to actually see who else is signing. And so, yeah, but I guess if we're not going to, if the mover of the motion is not prepared to make that amendment, then...
You heard the rumble, Councillor, but with respect, we didn't make the decision regarding Rockhampton's future or whatever.
Otherwise, did you make your decision based on the fact Banana Shire did? I mean, let's...
Yeah, exactly right. I was
Thank
just
you.
about to say the same thing.
The current recommendation from Councillor Trevor says that a report be presented to Council. It doesn't say whether we sign it or not. So I think that answers... it gives an opportunity for it to be signed in the future, but quite frankly, I'd be happy to decline the opportunity to sign it altogether. But I didn't second the motion. Councillor Churchill, you did. Are you happy as it stands? Thank you. The motion is that a report be presented to Council considering Council's position on a transitioning economy within 6 months. I'm putting the motion all in favour. Those against? The motion's carried. Thank you. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is deputations. We don't have any deputations. Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Carly.
Councillors.
There's no councillor reports written. Are there any verbal councillor reports? No? Councillor Hanson.
I don't normally do this, Mayor, but I just attended the Youth Council meeting last night, and there was a desire from that council to delve more into our policies and have a look at the youth involvement in those policies. And they'd just like to be updated on frequent youth issues that they may have a say with, rather than having to find them themselves. So I don't know how we do that. Kylie may have some way of involving automatically the Youth Council in youth issues, whereas, it may be consultations or whatever, anything to do with youth they would just like to be involved in. I don't know whether we do that yet, but we should.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Kylie, are you online? Maybe not. We might have to get some information back on that. Do you want to move a recommendation or just noted?
I just would like to note, or the CEO to note that, please, and maybe we can find a way of doing it.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Muscat, did you have?
I wanted to quickly, tell you a bit of a positive story about our CoStar Future activities that we've been undertaking in the last few months. The CoStar Future is the program that is going to develop our coastal hazard adaptation strategy, so we call it CHAS. So this has been, you would have seen it probably in the front page of the Council Connect. It's been a really, really great process that we have been going through. There's been a lot of community consultation up to now. We had the community consultations open on the 23rd of April, and it's just finished last week, but we still got more community consultation sessions coming up. It's been the online consultations have got over 2,000 views, 150 contributions. We have about 20 community members participating in online engagement and webinar sessions. So there is, we have people from the strategic asset performance, strategy and transformation, finance and governance and risk and customer experience, disaster management and the community development and events team all working together on this important strategy that is pretty much looking at the future, the current and future impacts of coastal hazards in our region and how we are going to manage if and obviously avoid them if we can. So this is, again, I guess, tidying up with some of the conversations we had in the past, proactively looking forward to the consequences and the impact of, climate changing and how we can mitigate and reduce, if possible, the negative impacts that this might have in our community. So this strategy will inform a number of very important documents that we have, being the planning scheme, the asset maintenance and renewal strategies, the emergency response and recovery activities that we have, and a lot more. So the team at Council is doing a great job, and I'm really proud of that activity. So they also asked me to do a special mention to Hannah Webb from the community engagement team for all the support that she's provided with all the online engagement strategies, activities that we've been doing. So that's all in our website. And I think, we already started some of these type of activities, online consultation and community engagement, before the COVID-19, situation commenced, but that's gone up to another level. And I also wanted to commend all that team in Council for maintaining that platform, and I think it's opened up a lot of avenues for people to connect with us and to connect with our officers and to understand more of the things that we do. So I'm really proud of that. So there's also an online photo competition, a coastline photo competition that people can go in. So if they like to, that'd be awesome. And just wanted to make sure everybody knew, and I'm pretty sure they're going to come and give us a bit of an update in either an open meeting or an information session in the future. So, thank you.
Thanks for that update, Councillor Muscat. Any other councillors have council report? No. The next item on the agenda is urgent business. There's no urgent business, no notices of motion, no confidential items. That's the end of the agenda. I declare the meeting closed at 4:02 p.m. Thank you.
Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify.